Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad you're here. Benjamin and I are laughing because right before we turn this thing on every time, folks, we're cracking jokes basically when it comes to the naughty things we find on the internet. Those cyber criminals and their shenanigans, they try to hide, but we find them anyway. And so we're usually cracking jokes about some of the labs we're going to do and some of the interesting things we found along the way. But as people start piling into the virtual room here, we're going to get started in just a moment. Continuing on with the series we've been doing this fall or autumn, depending on which part of the English-speaking world you're from, you might call it different things. And you may not be from the English-speaking world. This is a worldwide broadcast, and so you could be from anywhere. But as we've been doing things since August timeframe, it's back to school, and we're doing a concept here that's very similar to the art of war and knowing things about yourself and your enemies and your others. And today we're going to be talking about knowing your ever-changing surroundings, and in particular, that's the global attack surface, because we all occupy a little swatch on the internet, and that little swatch is constantly evolving and changing and moving around. Like what our digital presence is a very dynamic thing. And so is everybody else's. But to exist on the internet is to exist in relation to that internet. And so, and that relationship is continuously changing. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is what does the global attack surface look like? Because we're all parading about on it. And Benjamin, go ahead. You had the funny story to tell. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention that when you look at your ever-changing surroundings, the big thing is to how can you scale it? Because you can find it one or two things, and you can go through and know the pattern to go through, or you have a methodology that you're doing. But then how can I take that and scale it for SecOps? Because time is everything, and you have to check everything. You can't let one thing get through, because that one thing could be the thing that takes you down. So that's what we're going to focus on today is, focusing on taking your skills and doing something to scale it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, and you're spot on there. And in terms of scale, internet scale, it doesn't really get bigger than that. If you're talking about information technology, there's nothing bigger than the internet. And so to scale to that level is to basically scan to the known IT universe, literally. Again, we have people piling into the room here. We'll do some quick introductions. We've got a new member of the team that hasn't been here before, but you're going to meet Jackie Kelly, member of the RiskIQ team as well. She's on the camera right now, waving around. She's in a dark tunnel somewhere with her virtual background. I promise it's not cloak and dagger kind of thing or anything like that, but she just tries to become one with the enemy. You know how all the vendors and stuff, they have like a hooded guy? It reminds me of that. But go ahead, Benjamin, start us off. Like, who are you?
Okay. I'm Benjamin Powell. I'm the Director of Technical Marketing here at RiskIQ. I've worked as a practitioner and working at startups for my entire career. So I've run teams. So a lot of these use cases and things that you're going to see are from things that actually happened to me, or I experienced running teams, or questions that were asked of me. Fun fact, like I always say, is I enjoy spearfishing, but telling people in our industry that I'm a spearfisherman, they don't want to take my emails anymore. But I actually go and swim in the ocean and catch fish. And here's a picture of the last fish I caught with a actual pole spear, because my gun was broken. But this is some of the skills that I have. And I'll turn over to Josh.
And my skills are different. But you are right about the spearfishing thing. I wonder how many block lists you're actually on.
Probably a lot.
I heard it once before somewhere, and it's that heard in passing kind of thing. I'm a little bit more from the academic side. So I was a practitioner very many moons ago, very long time ago. But then I went off into the academic world and started studying behavioral patterns and the economics, really, when it comes to cyber criminality. In particular, when cryptocurrencies became a thing, you started to get a new financial order and a new economic order in the world of cybercrime. And so that's my background, and really study it at that level, trying to get into the head, the economic decision-making that goes into the motivations of the enemy and the adversary. So been a practitioner, but not for a long time, not like Benjamin, but just studied it more at a statistical and economic level, the economics of cybercrime. And then additionally with us today, Jackie, you want to say hello to the folks?
Hello, hello. So I've been in cybersecurity for 2 years, but I've been in marketing for 17 years and worked for a couple companies you may have heard of, the Kansas City Chiefs and Coca-Cola. And also a little fun fact, you may recognize my voice. Just kidding, but maybe. I've done some voiceover work for national commercials. I sang the Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl parade. And then also I do a lot of our marketing videos. And then just another little fun fact, I love Diet Coke.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, and you've helped us with these workshops, but behind the scenes. So you've been here the whole time. But finally, we got you to get out in front of the camera. So welcome to the spotlight.
It's a rare moment. I'm usually in their ear going, "Do that. Don't forget to mention this. Do this," and they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to take this out."
It's like the eagle is on the move. What? Like the Secret Service kind of thing or whatnot. But no, Jackie's always producing a lot in the background and letting us know what questions are coming in. We generally have, a few hundred people on these things. And so it can be tough to keep up with. And in addition to keeping up with all of that, is also with us today is Darren Becker, who's a part of our solution architect team. And you can think about it this way. We're sort of the nutty professors when it comes to this, workshop and lab exercises and all that fun stuff. And Darren's kind of like the TA. So he's going to be going around the virtual classroom and stuff and making sure you get in, you're logged into the labs, answering questions as best we can as we go through the exercises. So you can chime in there. And sometimes people use the little chat and sometimes people use the Q&A. You can use either one. But generally, if you want to make a comment like, "Oh, I got it before you," or something like that, that's usually for the comments. And then the Q&A is for, questions and answers, of course. And then you can always hit the little tap raise hand. Sometimes we do that to just kind of make sure, hey, did everybody get that? And then tap the little hand and raises up. And then it gives us a general idea that people are following along and understanding. But let's get into it.
Okay. And one thing I wanted to mention as well is that the 5 primers, Jackie actually came up with that idea to do that. So that was really that was something that one of her ideas. So that was really cool.
I have brilliant ideas, Becky.
That's right. It's her favorite word.
Thanks for being here. We have an Amazon gift card for one of our attendees today. So Josh, I don't know what you usually cover on this, but
we love the community. We want to thank you for being here and for participating. Plus, it tells your friends, the real swag that you get for being here. So at the end of the day, we're going to, announce somebody from our marketing team. They want to give away a $100 gift card. The thing is that we have a community of 100,000 plus people. The last I checked, which was a couple of weeks ago, we're up to 108,000 people in the community. So really excited for that. And just want to say thank you, because they generally are the people that attend these, are people that are in the community. And so we just want to say thank you. You do good work. Together, we will make the internet a safe place for all. And just rewarding that and thanking you for being here. Additionally, you'll get the Credly badges and all that. We'll talk about that a little bit more on how you get it, and then can put it on your profile and such, that you've gotten your continuing education. You have your Credly badge, your certificates, and all of that too. But real quick, just to make sure we understand who's in the room, who's who in the zoo, as they say, we have just a few questions that we want to chat through just to better understand your history, your experience with threat intelligence and some of the concepts, how you use it, etc. Because then that allows us to just tailor things to your specific role and
give you context. Yeah.
So just to kind of give it some context. If we were in a physical room, we would just kind of say, "Oh, who does IR?" and hands would go up, and who does vol management, and hands would go up, and all of that. So we'll start with that one real quick. Well, first let's think about the time of experience. So how long, what kind of experience level do you have with threat intelligence? And our right hand here, Barrett, in the marketing team, he is putting that question up. So and generally, by the way, safe space here, there's no wrong answer. it's generally people that are in the never or up to 2 years range. But we'll just give that a second, just to, again, get an idea of what your experience level has been. And then we'll go and close that. And we'll see the answers given here.
Yeah, so 33% less than 2 years, 44% 2 to 5 years, 70% more than 5, and 6% never. So it's, yeah, a lot, most people less than 5 years.
Most people, yeah, never 2 years or less than 5. And then those of you that are out there, the 17% that are greater than 5 years, thank you for being here as well. Oftentimes, you know, the wily old veterans can also help one another here. I know it's virtual. We're not all in the same physical room, but chime in. We're hunting these things together. This is live intelligence in the internet as we speak right now. And we're going to talk about the buffer zones that we're going to put up to make sure that we don't misstep into something malicious. But this is live things that can take an impact today. So helping out one another and our peers, we're a very community-driven organization. So please chime in and do that. Second question, though, was what I was mentioning earlier, like, how do you use it? So you generally use threat intelligence in these places, like vulnerability, some strategy planning, incident response. It's a common one. But just want to put that question of just how are you using it? So we talked about for how long, and now sort of how come, what for. You have that question, Barrett, that we can pop up?
Give me 1 second. The platform is saying it won't allow it to kick off. So give me 1 sec.
Oh, okay. No.
We might have to show hands.
We might have to show hands. You know what? Let's test the hand thing, because we never do that one.
Yeah.
By show of hands, the little virtual click hand. How many people use threat intelligence for incident response?
Okay, we have 6, 8, 10.
Hands going up.
11.
Okay.
13, 12, 13.
Okay.
Okay, so you can take down your hands now.
Okay. And then how many folks are using it in a vulnerability capacity, vulnerability management, vulnerability risk assessment, things like that?
We're up to 4, 5, 6, 7. This is great. I don't have to like actually count hands. So
okay.
7. We have to up to 7. Okay.
Okay. And there's a whole lot of people, I guarantee you, being quiet. Not one own up to. I get it. I get it. Okay. Just and then like sort of planning and strategy, sort of architecture, you know, things like that. When it comes to planning, architecture, infrastructure, that area that you use threat intelligence to inform.
There's three people.
Okay. Okay. And then finally,
John does everything. John has his hand up still.
Okay. And then how many people use it for integrating into other things in your security stack? So that's what I really use it for. I never look at it. I just use it to put it here and make sure it's in these other things to make them enriched. That's a
I see 8 people have raised their hands.
Yeah, that's a common one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Good. We have a general idea because on that last one, like I'm going to go ahead. Okay. Barrett, is the question platform working now? There's on that last part about integrations and so on, means we get to play with, and we're going to play a little bit with today, APIs. And so we wanted to see how often is that your MO? How often is that your general mode of practice is using API? You know, is it sometimes, always, never?
But if you can't get the question up, are you using the RiskIQ API at all?
Yeah, Josh, let's go ahead with hand raises one more time.
Okay.
Okay. How about I always prefer APIs? Raise hand.
Oh, that's 6 people, 8 people. Okay. Great.
How many APIs is sometimes API is preferred?
Four. So
Okay,
just a
and then
couple honest people.
And everybody else is just never, or you don't feel comfortable answering. Cool. Again, that's just to get an idea of how you're using it, how long you've used it, and then also your familiarity and comfort with API, because that's going to be a big part of some of the lab work today. So let's go ahead and get into some of this now, Benjamin. Now we kind of get a lay of the land here on who's who. So at RiskIQ, 2 parts, just as equal, just as awesome. Okay. On one side of the house, we have threat intelligence. On the other side, we have external attack surface management. So it's really the 2 sides of RiskIQ. Today, we're primarily talking about the threat intelligence side, because again, based on the poll questions you just answered, it's mostly around threat intelligence, finding bad things on the internet and making sure that we're shielded from it. And so we'll go to the next one there. And primarily, we're going to use all of these various data sets and capabilities in the Illuminate part of that equation. So most of you are familiar with passive total. It's been around for a long time. Illuminate's really built on top of that, and it adds some other features. That's the boxes there on the right that we'll get into. So there's a little bit more data sets and a bit more finished intelligence and finished analysis.
More context too.
Yeah, a lot more context that's driven there. So we're going to be using the Illuminate one today. And we do have the lab environment to get you in. So Benjamin, you want to take people through that to get people in the lab?
Yeah, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to copy and paste some information for you. So you'll have it. So let me just send this out to everyone. Make sure I have it correct. So if you check your chat window, you'll see the credentials and you'll see the link to log in. We're going to use this lab because I want you to be able to see third parties and to be able to see an attack surface that is the same for everyone. So we can go through and figure out, what's there and how it looks like. So that's why we're doing that. Okay. So please make sure you can log in and we'll kick things off. Now, the tools that we're going to be using today, we're going to use RiskIQ Illuminate, but we're also going to be using Jupyter notebooks. And I got our notebooks up online for us. So I'm going to send this in chat as well, that you can actually download the actual notebooks. There won't be any data in it, but if you go through and you set up Jupyter notebooks with pandas, there's some links inside the notebook that will actually show you where to go. You can actually kick these things off and be a rock star in your organization, because some of the notebooks that we're going to see today are entire investigations for phishing, or that type of request where an executive will come in and say, I just read this article. Does this affect us or anybody that we do business with? Let me know today. And they walk away and you're like, damn, why wasn't I getting coffee? But those requests come in and you have to go and figure it out. So I created a notebook that figures it out for you in minutes. So you can go on. So I worked with Mark Kendrick, and Mark Kendrick goes, hey, if you're going to use this notebook, you have to be smart. You have to say, okay, I'll let you know in about 3 hours. So you can have about 2 hours and 50 minutes worth of searching Reddit before you actually give them the answer. So you'll be very productive, but you'll love it. So we're going to go through and we're going to do it manually, and then we'll go through and do it through the notebook. And then we'll really be able to see how you can scale this. And that's the cool thing.
So should people open these now? Should they start?
You can, but if you don't have Jupyter Notebook installed, it's okay. We'll walk through it, and then you can go through and install it, and then you'll have the recordings and all these notes and everything, so you'll be able to run them. And I'm going to go through and explain what each section does. So everybody should have access, okay? But remember, what we're dealing with is real information.
Yes.
So go ahead. Do you want to take this one, Josh?
Yes. Okay. So let's all just be really honest with each other. Safe space, right? Lawyers rule the world. Okay. So we know that everybody here is a worthy professional. We just talked about our backgrounds. We know you know what you're doing. We just talked about the buffer zones. We just talked about the lab environment. We know how to operate these things. But lawyers rule the world. So RiskIQ's cyber threat workshops include live, real-time observations and threat indicators, including malicious infrastructure and adversary threat tooling. Okay. RiskIQ will share online resources such as IP addresses, domain names, etc., that should be considered real threats posing a clear and present danger. We ask our participants to use their best judgment and minimize unnecessary risk while interacting with malicious systems in workshop lab exercises. There, okay, the lawyers are now happy. We know you know what you're doing, and we have the buffer zones in place, but this is really live intelligence. We're not kidding about that part. This isn't a sandbox. This is not pre-recorded. Today is October 14th, 2021, and this is live, okay? So everything we're gonna interact with is also live. Okay, so our lawyers say, well, let's make sure they know that that's what it is, and that they need to be careful. And we know that you will be. So let's get into it.
And when we do these things, you never want to go directly there. You want to use a tool that will go gather the data and bring it back to the tool and not on your system. So then you can view the observations and understand everything that's happening.
Plus, it prevents the adversary from knowing that you're poking around in their stuff.
Right.
So that's another benefit.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. So this is now the fourth tenet that Jackie said, hey, we need to write something about this. And she came up with this idea, and it was like the art of war type scenario. So today we're focusing on know your surroundings, SecOps intelligence. So that's vulnerabilities, that's yourself, that's everything. But you're going to have to scale it, because when you talk about security operations, you need to be able to quickly know if something's good or bad. And you need to have a way of guiding your investigation. If you're junior and if I give you a list of indicators and you look at one of them and there's all these host pairs and you go, well, which thing should I click on? Where should I go? That's where you can actually see the ability to understand like a guided investigation. If you know that's suspicious or malicious, well, that's probably the path that you want to take. So that's what we're going to try to do, is to figure out where should it automatically guide me? And if I can write that into a script, the script can know, oh, that's malicious or suspicious. Okay, that's the next step where I would go. And you could take the knowledge of the experienced investigator and build the notebook that a junior person can run it and see it, but that gives them the skills to understand what's good and bad. You have to train your eyes to be able to see these things, and that's usually by on-the-job experience. And that's what these exercises are, real live observations that are happening now to give you that experience, that you don't have to have that career-ending experience at your organization where something happened and they go, well, should have known, we need to get somebody more experienced to come in and do it. I want to give you the experience now that when something happens, you go, oh, I've seen that before. I know what to do. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So inside of here, the fourth tenet, what we're going to be looking at is not only the vulnerabilities that you have, but also your third parties, because you might rely upon a third party to do business. And if they have a problem or they get compromised, that could compromise you. So we're going to focus on that. And we're also going to focus on Jupyter Notebooks to automate and extend the capabilities. So if I give you, like last week, we looked at an investigation, we looked at phishing, and I had a notebook that looked at PayPal objects. They have 1 million host pairs. So if you're going to go through and look at 1 million host pairs every single day, you're going to need a lot of staff to click and look and see. But if I create a notebook, I can run that same example and take me about 5 minutes and have that investigation done and know everyone that's phishing PayPal as of right now. So, and you just rerun it and you get the latest data and you can tell it the period of time. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, whole lot of efficiency, and how can we leverage the intelligence that we discover and find and hunt through in a programmatic way and in a scalable way, to where it has applicability far and wide. Because the internet's a big place and it's constantly changing. And so we need those defenses to be just as adaptive and just as capable of flexing and adjusting to the changing environment. So those are, do you want to hit on the agenda?
Yeah. So what I did was I was actually reading an article. It was actually good. It said, hey, organizations are pretty slow to fixing things. And because they're not patching quickly enough, they open themselves up to attacks. And so we're going to look at the article, the actual article, and there's a bunch of CVs in there, and then we're going to investigate those. And this is where the executive comes in and goes, hey, I read this article and it says that people are slow. Do we have these problems in our org? Are we protected? And all the third parties that we're dealing with, can you tell me if they're affected? And you're going to have to figure this out. So that's the issue. And I want to make sure that people can log in. If otherwise, I will check to make sure the account's okay. I checked it this morning, but if we can't get in, Darren, please let me know.
Benjamin and I successfully logged in, no problem.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
Okay, so the other piece is, where do I go from here? If I'm looking at something and you're not the most senior investigator, you might not know which ones are suspicious or malicious by looking at them. So you might need to have some experience or have a system that can check a few things to give you some understanding and give you a reputation score so you know which ones to look at. So we're going to look at a commonly phished thing, a bank. And so I picked Navy Federal. I used to bank there years ago, so I just picked that one. And people are constantly phishing, financial institutions. So we're going to go look and see, look at that investigation and then scale it. And then we can try other domains as well. And then one of my favorite ones is, who's phishing Netflix? And over the years, like I had done this years ago, and Netflix actually was in one of my live workshops where you look at two domains and they both look bad. And they go, okay, which one's a good one? Let's figure it out. And so I want to take that and have you see if you can figure out which ones are good or bad. And I have like 10 or 15 domains. A few are good and all the rest are malicious and bad. So I want us to go through and figure out which ones are good and bad. And then we'll run a notebook that will go through and completely look at everything at Netflix. They have, I think, 27,000 host pairs, and we can see everybody that's phishing them right now. And immediately know that information. And all of these notebooks are in that zip file. So if you're at one of these organizations or you want to just change the domain to be yours, you can do that and you can immediately know if someone's phishing you. So we'll go through and do all these today.
Yeah, and where that's really applicable, like you may not be Netflix, okay, and you may not be the one being phished, but guess what? You inhabit the internet with Netflix, and you have people in your organization, people in your partners. You have machines themselves that are talking and doing trust relationships with the rest of that internet. And when the things that they're bumping into and interacting with and becoming entangled with are fraudulent, that then does bleed over into us, because we're all swimming around in the same internet. And so when we can find malicious things and then shield ourselves from it, then that protects us from, again, even if we don't do business with them, it doesn't mean that some of your employees may not visit that area or mistakenly end up there when it comes to a phishing campaign or any number of different personnel or people that are directly within your attack surface becoming entangled with the thing out there that's malicious or illegitimate. And so here, let's do this real quick. Let's just level set for a moment. Is that cool? And then we'll get into the labs. Sorry. I'm gonna sound a little preachy here, okay? Like we said, people respond too slowly, we talk about that one on the vulnerabilities. I'm gonna just say this right now. It's easy for the press to say that, isn't it? It's a whole lot easy for them to sit out on their perch and say, you're too slow. Do you know what I do every day? Do you know how many things I have to keep up with? But there are real challenges, and slow is only something you can measure after the fact. You don't see it day in and day out, moment by moment, where all I do all day long is one big long emergency. Welcome to the life of security. So don't tell me I'm slow, because you're not measuring the other things I got to lightning fast. So, sorry, I know I got a little bit on my high horse there, but seriously, we're a community-based kind of company, and it's easy to heckle from the sideline. It's another thing to get into the battle. So there are some challenges though that no one really wanted to happen. They're sort of byproducts. and we're all victims of circumstance. One is we let digital eat the world, okay? We literally dematerialize the world around us. We turn physical things into digits. We turned it all into bits and bytes. And so it's nearly infinite in scope and scale. It is diverse and completely non-standard. And it is difficult because it's moving around all the time to maintain a line of sight and visibility. It's always expanding, always changing in every direction, up, down, left, right, in a 3-dimensional space, okay? And through time, so 4 dimensions, okay? Next, what's another thing? Because of that, because digital ate the world, it's kind of hard to find and prioritize what really matters the most. That goes to the whole slow. Are we slow? Are we really? Or did we just have other priorities? It's not like we're all just sitting around, right? But everything's being digitized all around us and it's vulnerable everywhere. Well, I'm sorry, I have to get to the 57,000 other things today before I can get to the 58,000 thing. Right. But it can be difficult to know, is this a priority right here, right now? Does this really matter? And that's where, again, we need some more insight to really drive what's most relevant. And then getting a meaningful outcome out of that, really getting something substantive, something that will be sustained, that's scalable. But I'm dealing with a lot of legacy, a lot of old way of thinking, and a lot of old way of doing when it comes to the technologies I use, the processes I use, the people I work with, the people that work against me sometimes, right? There's a lot of things that can interfere with a meaningful outcome, which ultimately then keeps us from the holy grail, which is scaled global defense. That's adaptive, because it needs to adapt as the digital material adapts. The digital material, the bits and bytes, everything that digital ate the world and dematerialized it all, it's changing right now. The internet is different now versus what it was a moment ago. And now it's different again. And I need my defenses to adapt in that same kind of rapid pace. So to just break it down real simple, like what we do to help make the internet a safe place is think about the ball as an attack surface. So this is a ball, and this ball is your attack surface. There's 2 sides to it. There's a hard side. It's your devices you're used to. So typically something happens on one of those devices. Then it goes in like an endpoint protection platform, your CrowdStrikes, your Defender ATP and so forth in Microsoft, and then Sentinel-1. I don't think anybody uses FireEye anymore, but those that do, probably a bigger discussion. I'm going to just lawyers rule the world, right?
Well, and the other thing is those are things that you own and control.
Right.
Those are things that you physically own and control because they're your own, and you can interact with them because they're yours.
Yeah. Direct access, unmitigated access, right, to those things. There's nothing prohibiting you from taking ownership, taking control of it, and then you can deploy to all. Pretty simple logic. What about the other side of the attack surface? The digital side. That's the rest of the internet. That's that digital presence. That's that bit sphere of bits and bytes and dematerialized digit space. Okay.
Everything outside your organization.
Everything else. None of which I have direct management and control over because it's an internet property. It's something that's on the internet, relating within the internet. It lives in relation to the rest of everything else. There is no internet without relationship. So it's sort of floating out there. Okay. But at the same time, I still want to get analysis, understanding how it's related, graph it, and then apply what it is that I know to defend it to all. And the all in this case is the whole digital internet. So again, very similar logical pathway that we're following here that we're used to doing when it comes to like our device space. Now we're just talking about the other endpoint, which is the internet itself. Okay. So that's what we'll do today.
So let me mention one thing. So when we graph the internet, we graph the entire internet. We know everything, all the connections, all the relationships. So it's really simple for us to say, oh, this is you. This is your piece of the internet. And then when we look at that, we now have context of what's yours, what's installed, what's running, how it looks like. So then when we look at the threat intelligence, we can say, these are the threats that are meaningful to you. These are articles that are meaningful to you. These are bad things that could affect you, or these are the bad things that are commingling or interacting with your presence on the internet because of this type of inside-outside relationship that we can do. Yeah.
Great. And I mentioned this already. That's just a pretty graphic to illustrate it. It's always changing. It's complex, multifaceted. That's all that complex means. A complex is a structure, a construct of multiple parts that interlock with one another to create the whole. That's all that we mean by a complex. But then it's dynamic, so it moves around. That construct is constantly moving, okay? And it's thereby changing its identity. What identifies my attack surface today is different than what identifies my attack surface tomorrow, which allows, again, attackers to hide in plain sight because they've already been living out there on the internet for a long, long time. And now we have new neighbors as we push outside of our firewall. We're getting cozy up to people that aren't necessarily looking out for our best interest. So we have to adjust to what it is that's happening out there. And that's really the two sides of what we do, the external attack surface management, taking control, taking aim, understanding what it is that my digital presence is out there on the internet. And then what other terrible, horrible things are out there. And again, terrible, horrible, maybe too judgmental. What kind of people have an incentive to do something against me where I have a weakness, they have opportunity, and they have the means to do it? Right? And that's really just it. It's not personal most of the time here. It's not personal. It's means, motive, and opportunity. Right. And so are we giving them an opportunity? What's going on with my ever-changing surroundings, my own vulnerabilities, my own visibility to them? What's their motive? It's become more financial than ever before. And what are their means? Believe me, the tooling is significant. Their means of attack is constantly growing. And that's what we do. So that's what this graph represents. We map all of that adversary infrastructure because, again, it can be operated by one threat actor or thousands when it comes to its distribution. But if you put a flag in all the places that it is, if you fingerprint, you identify, then if it spins up here and spins down and pops up somewhere else, it's already identified and then defended against by virtue of its fingerprint, regardless of how who's operating it, where it's operating, and so forth. The constructs of the thing itself, its fingerprint, its identity, based on that tooling that it contains, that maliciousness, the unique identifier of maliciousness is shielded from you. And so with that, let's get into this.
Let's get in. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the exercise we talked about. I've seen some chats about the Jupyter notebooks. So that's Python. So that's running Python with Jupyter notebooks and pandas. And even you might even want to throw in like MaxMind database to get geolocation type stuff. But you don't have to do that right now. And next week, I'm going to work with Mark Kendrick, and we're going to do a video that will show how to install it. And then we're going to walk through the one that we're going to do for looking at CVEs. So we're going to walk through that one together, and we're going to create a video. So next week, I'm going to do something to show how to install it if you haven't done it, and walk through that one notebook, because I think that one's going to be used the most out of anything we've ever created. So we're going to do that next week. So for right now, if you don't have it installed, no problem. You'll see how it works. You can ask questions, and then we'll do a follow-up one with that video.
Hey, Benjamin, did you keep talking about this Mark Kendrick person? Did you want to say who he is?
So Mark Kendrick he's an employee here at RiskIQ, and he wrote these notebooks, and the ability for us to go into Mystic Pi and connections to be able to really format our data coming out of our API to make it extremely useful and friendly to be able to answer questions. And so what's really neat is I've taken some of his notebooks and extended them. And then just this week, I was asking him a question about an article and said, it'd be really cool if we could do this. And we sat down yesterday and created this. And it took us like 20 minutes to create. So I want to give Mark credit for these notebooks because they're his baby, but we always extend them. So like he individually creates it, I'll take it and I'll extend it, and then I give it out to the world to help people, make the internet a safer place. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'll get into like what happens. So when all this data comes in, the only way that we're really be able to do this is that we're actually we have probes and sensors, active and passive collection, to be able to go out there and understand every IP, every domain on the IP4 space, and understand all the relationships in that context. So we do about 2 billion web requests today. We even have over 300 mobile apps, stores that we're monitoring, and we have over 34 million mobile apps. So we're going to be coming out with our Black Friday report, which will talk about which mobile apps to not use because they're going to steal your information. So that's going to be coming out. But as all this data comes in, we have security research and threat intelligence people that will go through and figure out something. They talk with our data scientists and they figure out how to do it at scale. And that's the machine learning. So every single day, as we collected data from a day, we merge it to our internet our internet map and all the relationships. But it gives us the ability to roll back in time and move something forward. If we ever come up with like a new piece of data, like cookies was that way, host pairs, trackers, all those things where we can look at an investigation and say, was there a single piece of data that linked all this infrastructure together? And if there is, we create that data set or that ability and we can roll it back in time and bring it forward. So then we see all those past things that happened. So when this comes in, that allows us to have a single thing that we can look at, like a piece of malware and say, oh, that malware, we can infrastructure chain it together, say that malware was from this IP on this and had this cert. That cert was also seen on this domain and had these IPs, and we can build these chains out. So what we found out was talking with our community, they were looking at open source articles and running those indicators inside of Passive Total to be able to see if there was any other relationships or any other data that wasn't disclosed. So we actually went through and started sucking in the world's open source intelligence articles, pulling out all the indicators from images and hard to reach places and make them so you can click and see them. But then our threat researchers went through and said, hey, we can look at these things and determine if something's good or bad. And we can also find extra things that are part of that investigation and give you that full picture so you can be further down that path. So that's kind of what we do. So what we're going to do is the first scenario. So inside of this scenario, I'm just going to pull up this article and I'm going to send it to you. Okay. And we'll open it up. Okay. So here's an actual article that came out. So executive reads the article and he goes, does this affect us? Does it affect our customers? And we're going to go through and we're going to answer this together. Okay. And we'll please, ask questions. This is live. So I want to make sure that we're all doing this together. Okay. And if you don't understand what we're doing, please let me know.
I wonder how many times this actually happens to people where people stop them and say, hey, did you see this article?
It would happen to me all the time.
Yeah,
so this is something that was like a common occurrence. And what happens is if you're good at your job and you've been at an organization a long time, they go to the person that gets the results done.
Right.
And even though you might not be your job, you know how to do it, or you know who to contact to get the answer. So the executive's just going to go to you, or your boss or somebody there. So when you read this article, it starts talking about these CVEs and saying, for the last 2 years, there's been some CVEs that are out there that people haven't patched. And if you haven't patched these, what does that mean? How big are these problems? And does it affect me or others? So I want to pose this to the audience. Like, how would you start? How would you look at this? And if somebody wants to get unmuted, raise your hand and I'll unmute you and we'll talk and we'll discuss it and we'll go through and we'll do it together. So any show of hands? Let's see. Anybody brave? Oh, I see one. Mac. Okay. So can we unmute Mac? Mac, are you there? Did we lose him? Is there a way to do that? Want to see.
Sure.
Don't know if it will let me.
Yeah, I unmuted Mac. You're
okay.
Wide open.
Okay, Mac, how are you? Is your mic on? Okay, we'll give him a second. If it doesn't work, you can remute him. Mac, are you there?
Max says big sad.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I guess it's not working. Okay.
Okay.
We'll mute him. We'll mute him again. Okay. So let's look at Illuminate. So Illuminate has some more advanced features than passive total. It gives me the capability of looking at vulnerabilities. Vulnerability information is built into it, and I can look at it from two different ways. One of them is an insight, where if we determine that something's bad, we can actually look at the crawler. So it's not just a CVE is there. It might be that, hey, this version is running, but when we go talk to it and we pull back the banner or we run this check, we can actually verify if there's a problem or not. So it's a deeper understanding of what's there. So let's take a look at some of these. So if I take a look at this CVE, okay, I'm just going to copy the CVE. And we'll go into RiskIQ, and I'm just going to paste that CVE in, okay? So immediately when I do that, you'll see information about that CVE. You'll see the affected systems, okay? You'll understand if there's any third parties that are affected, and even if there's chatter in the deep and dark web. The reason why we're showing you this is that sometimes a vulnerability comes out. There might be like 20,000 different CVEs out there, but maybe there's only 20%, 10% that have actual proof of concept vulnerabilities where they can actually show that they can exploit it. And those are being talked about. So the ones that you should be fixing first are the ones that there's a vulnerability, there's an active exploit, and people are talking about it and doing it right away. Those are the low-hanging fruit to do first. So if you notice here, there's this detail section. So I'm going to open that up in another tab. And the reason why I like to open another tabs is I can jump back if I need to. So this is now another view of that information. So inside of here, you'll see a RiskIQ score. You'll see all of the advisories that are out there on this one, and even the CWE. So if I right click and open that up, we can see that this is the common weakness enumeration. It talks about it, tells you how easy it is to exploit, information like that. If I want to see the CVEs, I can actually come through and look at everything that's listed here, open those up and show them to you, okay? It looks at my own attack surface and tells me if I have this in my own attack surface, I'm logged in as RiskIQ. So we don't have that issue in our own attack surface. But then I can look at the third parties and I can say, hey, are any of these third parties affected? Right off the bat, I can do this, okay? And this is because Illuminate has that external attack surface and all of the different knowledge of what every other organization has. So if that CVE is located in these places, I can see it. Now, I'm going to go back to the home real quick, and I'm going to click on my attack surfaces, okay? Now, if I go into the highs real quick, you'll notice that there is one for Apache in here. So let me find it. Apache. Here's an Apache one. So if I click on this one, these types of insights, those things that are there, it's a higher fidelity of understanding. We're using more than just what's installed in the version information, but there might be some back-end stuff where maybe we went in and looked at the banner. There was probably a specific check that you can do to say, hey, if you have this version and you run this particular check, you can see if it comes back as susceptible or not. Or if the patch was applied, it doesn't change the version number, but if you check it, it's not really susceptible, or mitigating control maybe is blocking it. So when we're using our virtual users and grabbing this data, we have that ability to do those types of checks. So for the ones that are highly critical, we'll create insights for. And those insights might be like for the Microsoft Exchange issues. We actually went out and would do checks to say, we know what version, but we can actually do a check to say you were compromised or not. There was a higher fidelity of understanding. So what we need to do for each one of these is to go through and to run those types of checks. But there's another thing I want to show you, and I'm going to paste this in 1 second. So if we look at the Tomcat ones, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this into our chat. Okay, give me a second. I lost the chat screen.
Your tabs are very organized, Benjamin.
Oh, thank you.
Super impressed with this.
I learned something new, and I'll show you that in a second. It's pretty cool. So if we take a look at this, I'm running a query now to look for Apache version 2.4.50. And the vulnerability affected this particular version, okay? So if I look, I see that there are 7,000 domains that are running this, and there are 35,000 IP addresses that are running this, okay? But it doesn't tell me really which organizations, what attack surfaces they belong to. So if you're just running passive total, this is what you would see. This is the information that you would glean. So if you wanted to see for yourself, you would have to know your IP addressing, your domains, and check every single one of them to verify that that was the case. And then for your partners, you would have to do that same thing. Know their IP space, know their domains, know all their hosting providers that they deal with, and you would have to individually go through and check each one of those. But with Illuminate, because we have now this idea of your external attack surface and merging all those things together, we give you the ability to look at yourself and others as a complete group of things. And to be able to filter to say, this group of things, does this thing affect myself because I know what I have? And if there's a match, I can quickly show you. Or if I am a third party and I want to look at my competition, I want to look at a managed service provider, I want to look at payment card processing, a bank, whoever it is, I can get that third party attack surface. And now I can look apples to apples at myself and others and understand what's there.
Hey, Benjamin.
Yes.
Real quick, someone in the chat is asking which CVE was it again?
Okay, so I will paste that in.
Looks like we've got some help from somebody.
Right, so I'm pasting that in. So here's a link directly to the CVE to give you that information, okay? And then if you drill into the details, that will be this one. I'm sorry, that will be, I had changed it to open it up in another tab. Here's the detailed article. So I'll paste that in as well. So just from the main screen, if I type in any CVE up in this main search and I have it looking at the intelligence card, that will bring up all the CVEs. So that's a way that I can do it. So if I went back to the article and I grabbed a different one, here's the vCenter one. I can grab that vCenter. And if I went in and searched it, I can see the affected systems. I have no third parties in there. And if I drilled into it, my attack surface at RiskIQ doesn't have it. And my impacted third parties, there's none. So I've checked it. So I've gone through and I checked those things, okay? Now, one thing is, it's a lot of busy work to go through and do this. And just in case you don't have that third party or you don't understand all the ramifications for this, maybe the insight, you don't know how to find the right insight to say, is this CV in this insight? Because maybe there's some better detection. There's a way that we can do this inside of Jupyter. So what I wanted to do is I want to bring up Jupyter Notebook, and we're going to run through this together. Okay, so I have one where I've already run it, but I have an empty one like how you would see it. And I'm going to bring that up real quick. So here we go. And let me know if you can see it okay, Jackie and everybody. I can zoom in a little bit more and I'll explain what it is. So I have Python installed, Jupyter and Pandas, and I have the MaxMind database in there. So if I ever want to do geolocation, I can do that. And inside of here is the information on how to get started, and I will paste that in. So this is a nice documentation walkthrough on how to get this set up, how to get your API credentials. This is all part of that zip file. All these things are in here. It explains about the dependencies that we're using. So the first thing that we're doing is I'm going to run this to give me to set pandas and say the maximum is like 500,000 rows. I just made it really big. And what we're going to be looking at is the attack surface and the vulnerability intelligence. So those are the two aspects of Illuminate that we're going to use in this notebook. And then I'm going to initialize the analyzer. That's what Mark Kendrick wrote, is the analyzer. And I'm going to check for these CVEs. So when I run these CVEs, I put them all in, and I added another CVE in here. So this particular one wasn't part of the article. And in the article, this last one, which was 27065, they had a 0 at the end. It was a typo in the article. So I took that one out. Okay. But when I ran that, now immediately it ran and checked every CVE against every organization that's part of my third-party portfolio. And I see that. Okay. Now, some have zeros in them. So we filter the data to say, show me everything that had a hit for a particular CVE and which organization was affected. And you can see that some of these are very large. So for example, here is almost 20,000 hits on this one. So as we go through, the next thing is to say, hey, if I want to go through and figure out a particular CVE and I want to know which devices that organization has that could be affected, okay, for that CVE. Okay, so I'm going through and here's the CVE and I'm breaking this down to show you what you can do. So here's the information talking about the CVE. So if I update at the top the CVEs or down in here, that will now give me that information. Okay, so now I'm focusing just on this one CVE. That's telling me, hey, when it was created, when it was published, how many references, which components are affected, and then looking at the impact. And here's the impact to all the organizations for that one CVE, okay? And then I can look to see those attack surfaces, and those attack surfaces, you can see which ones I'm looking at. And I wanted to be able to go through and say, what's an easy way for me to look at that list of third parties? And maybe I want to break down and look at one particular. So for example, one of them listed here was Charter Communication, okay? So I just grabbed Charter, and this is a way for me now to run that and say, give me the information for Charter, okay? And it goes through and now grabs me all of those IPs and domains that were susceptible, have the CVE matched because of that version that was running there. So it gives me, it's very quick. And then I can go through, and if I only wanted the IPs, I can filter it to say, just show me the IPs. Or if I just want the hosts, I can filter it and just give me the hosts.
And just backing up just a second. Okay, you know, just show me the IPs, just show me the hosts. But just, I like that you picked Charter, because the thing is that what's the number one challenge? Is that digital ate the world? Yeah. Like, it's so subversive. And sometimes we can forget, or we think to ourselves many times, well, I don't really have a whole lot of third parties, and I don't really have a lot of digital supply chain and things like that. But it's, again, it ate the world. So we're enveloped in a digital relationship all the time. So sometimes we don't think about them. Your ISP, hosting providers, the people that do your credit card processing for your retail centers. Right. We're not talking about necessarily digital properties in the sense of like a website somebody goes to and, YP, is, or WP is, WordPress and all of its affiliates and all the different partners and so forth that are, babysitting your websites. That's not what we're talking about. They're substantive organizations that have themselves substantive footprints, right? And so it can be easy to forget just how many digital dependencies we have, because they're the air we breathe every day. So I'm glad you called out charter, because every one of us has an ISP, and every one of those ISPs has entanglements with all manner of different other organizations, as well as the nefarious types out there.
Right, and they might host things, and other people might be hosting with them, but there's, they have their own infrastructure and they have customer infrastructure. So if there's vulnerabilities there, it might not be in their own infrastructure. It might be through a client that's using them.
Yeah,
but if that client has a problem,
it's the Russian doll. It's an infrastructure within an infrastructure within an infrastructure.
Correct. And the problem is that if one of those gets compromised, maybe that can cause traffic problems or routing problems, or denial of service somewhere. So it could still affect you somehow. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do now that I got the CVE information and I can break that down for anyone in the list, I wanted to go look at an organization and say, now give me all their active insights. This is the high, medium, and low, the color change. So if we go back, I'm just going to bring this up real quick. So for example, if I came into here and let me look at a third party, I'll bring up charter. Okay. So I have the high, medium, and low. So if I want to run something to say which ones were high, medium, and low, that there's actually a count for. Okay. So if I went back, the one that is good to look at for you guys in the attack surface that you have is this Uninet. Okay. So we're gonna look at Uninet, and if you notice, when I drilled in, there was this little number at the end that corresponds to their name. Okay, so that's like the number reference to their name. Okay, so if we look at that Jupyter notebook we created, if you notice in here, there's a vendor ID, and that's the same number that's here. So instead of searching it and doing it by the name or a partial match on the name of my third parties, I can also do it by this number. So in this particular section, I wanted to give you an example that I can run this and get that attack surface based upon that organization. And these are all the active high, medium, and lows that are happening for this organization. Okay, so it gives me the active things that have problems that we have insights for, not just CVEs, but this is, there's something out there that we've done some extra detection for. Okay, so that's what's there. So now that you see those different ways of doing it, I wanted to take all of those CVEs that are based upon the top section, and I want to go through and see if there was any articles, any insights that had those particular CVEs in them. And out of that list of CVEs, and I also added one that was based upon the 24990, the push dairy crash. That was one that I added to that list up above that wasn't in the article. Okay, so now that I have that list, I know which articles correspond to the CVEs that were important to me. So I found all the ones that were out there, but now this has some higher level of fidelity in here. And I want to go through now and run those particular ones. So now it's going to go and give me the matches for those. Okay. And we're running in real time. So this is actually going out, grabbing the data, bringing it in. And now that it's cached, I can do information with it. So here they are. Here's all those for that particular organization. Okay. And then I can come through and I can look at myself. So this is a way to look at those CVEs that were defined at the top of the notebook and look at my own attack surface, and see if I have any of those in my own organization. So here I am looking at those articles and seeing those hits and see which devices have that problem. So it's completely solved this problem that comes up in life where they go, does this affect us? Now that this is created, I can give this to somebody at the help desk and say, the next time this problem happens and the executive comes up, you guys are going to fulfill this, or you're going to proactively do it. And then you can send out a message saying, we don't have anything to worry about. And it's done. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to clear this.
Are we affected by this? Boss, that's yesterday's news.
Yeah, you didn't see the email. It's ready. It's in your inbox. It's done. Yeah. So I'm just going to run all this so you can see how fast it takes. So I'm running the whole thing. Just told it to run it. And here it comes. It's starting to come in. And it's all done. It's still the bottom part's going. There it goes. So that investigation, will probably take you a couple hours to go through and look and see how big the problem is. Pick up the phone, call people if you're not running Illuminate and saying, do you have this? Do you have this? Are you running this? What's your IP space? The whole thing is done. It's a minute. So you can be on Reddit for like 2 hours and 58 minutes, having fun, and then say, oh, here's your data. Yeah. We're affected by this one, but we're not affected by the others. Or so if I come in now and I take out this one CVE, okay. So if I came up and there's that one CVE here, so if I delete this to match what was in the article and I rerun it, I forgot to remove the comma. Okay, so I reran that. So if I come down to the bottom now and I run it again, none. We're not affected by it. Questions answered. So now you have this notebook. This should completely help you to answer those questions and to give you context of how you are in the world, what's happening. But if somebody wanted to find out how big is this problem in the entire world, that was that was this one. So let me see. That was looking at like these types of queries, where if you look up here in this search bar, this is looking at version of Apache 2.4.50. And if I made it 0.49, I can see all the other ones. So if I did that, 33,000 host pairs. And if I click on the IPs, it will run that query, and there are probably millions of this one. Oh, 87,000. Okay. So I can immediately know how wide the problem is, and then how it affects me and the others that I'm interested in. Hey, Darren, are there any questions that have come in?
I haven't seen any, Benjamin.
Okay. So do you like that notebook?
And again,
totally streamlines the process. Great stuff.
Yeah. And the thing is, we play with the Jupyter all the time. So we know that was really quick and really fast for everyone. So again, safe place here. Everybody good with the basics of what we were doing there with the Jupyter notebook?
So Benjamin, a good question just came in as far as, this is assuming you have an entity as a vendor ID. So the question came in, what happens if it's not in your system? Well,
if, for example, if you don't have third party, then you don't see those third parties. You would only see yourself. If you got third parties, then it will go look at your own individual third parties that you've assigned to your organization.
Let me answer it in another way. Okay. Basically, to answer some of that question, the question might come in, hey, I don't see an entity or an organization in your attack surface awarenesses that I've seen in the past. We have not illuminated that attack surface. We have a process internally where we start to take those requests, we send them to the team, and within 3 to 5 days, they start to illuminate a specific attack surface, and then that becomes visible. So there's a process we follow internally.
Correct. So the one thing you have to think about when you look at these types of insights, the CVEs, that's instantaneous. As soon as NIST has the information, we pull it down every day. So if NIST doesn't have like the which systems are affected by it, then the first day that we have it, it might not have that. Then when NIST updates it and says, oh, these are the affected systems and versions, then the next day when we pull it, we'll have it. And then we already have the map of the internet and we know where all the things are. We say, oh, these are the attack surface they belong to. So that's how that works for looking at CVEs. Insights, remember, are based upon looking at yourself. So when I go into my dashboard to look at my insights, those are your individual insights for your organization. So if you have Illuminate, you at least have your own attack surface observations. And that's broken down to high, medium, and low. So this is like where, we have one of our people, Ryan Munch, came up with this cool thing saying, it's like where you start with your morning coffee. Things that are red, you need to take care of right away. Things that are medium, you might need to work with some other group to get that fixed. It might be a certificate's expiring, or there might be some problem. The low one might be, hey, it's a deprecated version of something that we need to address and we need to fix, and it might take more time. This middle section here is your attack surface. This is what we've seen for you. And if anything has changed in your attack surface for the last 30 days, then we break down what we see out there. What's the web server distribution of what you're running, okay? And then what frameworks you're running. And then where we see what cloud services are you using? Is it in your own data center? Is it looking at Amazon? Is it in Google? Is it in Microsoft Azure? Where is it? Where are you hosted? What's happening? And then this vulnerability and exposure piece are articles, open source intelligence articles that were written that got hits on that attack surface. So for example, I'll go back and I'm going to bring up that UUNet one real quick. So I'm going to drill into that real quick. So this is one that's in your attack surface. So if I go look at the UUNet one, okay, so this is now a third party. Because it's not me, it's a third party. But if I was UUNet, I would see this. If I'm not, then I would buy a third party attack surface and see theirs, okay? But the same view that you have for your own attack surface is for every other one out there. So as I come in, I see these vulnerability and exposures. And what that means is that an article was written somewhere in the world that talked about some version of something or talked about some particular IP or domain. And that belongs in this Uninet attack surface. So for example, here's one ghost in Mira. So let's say open that up in another tab. So let me view this real quick. So you can actually see the article. So here's the article, and here are all the public indicators. Okay, so there's 23 URLs, and there are 24 IP addresses, and there's some hashes. Okay, so if we go back and I right click on the number and I open that in another tab, now these are the things that hit for it. Okay, so if I look at this IP address and I copy it and I go back and I look for it, I should have that in here if that was hitting for that particular thing, but it could be because of ASN. Let's see, one of them. Let's see, MySQL. Let me see if there's another one. Okay, I'll copy this one. And let's go back. I have a hit. I should have a hit on this. Could be because of a hash URL. So these IPs should be in here. So 2001, 192. Oh, I opened the wrong one. Sorry, that's why. I opened the wrong indicators. That was for the top one. This one corresponds. Okay. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to copy it. So now we have additional information. So if I go back and I try to find this, there it is. That IP address appeared there. So if we look at this right here, here's the article. Here are the count. So I opened the wrong article, the wrong count for the article. I was clicking on the wrong one. So inside of here, this IP address appeared here, okay? And this is part of their IP space. And this is where it is. So we will actually show you all the world's open source articles and what affects you, even though we didn't write it or we might have not extended it, okay? So that's the value that you get to see your entanglements that are happening out there. Jackie, any questions?
Yes. There is one from Mac. I think, Darren, you can probably answer that one.
Yeah. So Mac, can you help me understand when you say, can you prioritize CVEs that have POC in the wild? My terminology for POC is proof of concept, but what do you mean by POC in the wild?
That, I think that's what he means. And we actually do that for our CVE numbers. So let me see if I can find one. So hold on one second.
While you're looking for that, I'll also try to respond to Mac's question as far as utilizing JARM. So we do have JARM hashes in our platform. So that is one of the threat tabs when you investigate threats. Right now, we're going through a lot of CVEs, but based upon IPs or domains, if we have JARM hashes, we have that JARM hash functionality within the platform.
Yeah, there we automatically do it. Let me find. Trying to see, I had one that was a really good CVE. Let me see if it's one, previous one. So we have this exploit. Oh. Here, sorry. This is live, remember? Okay, so here we go. So let's look for this particular one. So when I drill in, you'll actually see the known exploit. So if there is one out there, Mac, we actually show you that known exploit and a link to it. And our score will reflect that. And we'll also look at the deep and dark web and see if there's chatter about it. So if we see that people are talking about this exploit and there's a proof of concept out there, we will give it a higher score. Okay, to say, hey, this is something you really need to take care of. So that's what we do. And that will show up under your vulnerabilities. So if we go and look at the top vulnerabilities for your organization, those are going to be higher up to the top. Okay, so I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Benjamin, when you're on this view, could you maybe zoom just a little bit?
On which one? The one that looking at the vulnerabilities?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay.
Or I need glasses, but that's for another day.
No problem. So so the next one I want to do is I want to get into the next one because we only have about 40 minutes left. Okay. So what I want to do is walk through an investigation, and this one is not that big. But what I want to be able to do is to ask you, hey, if you're looking at host pairs, for example, which are the ones I should be looking at, and which are the ones that potentially might have, might be the avenue of investigation I should go down? Which ones I should say, oh, this one's good or this one's bad, and how would I do that? Okay, so I'm going to paste this one in, and then we're going to jump into this one. Okay, so give me a second. I'm just going to paste this into our chat. Okay, here we go. And I am going to click on this as well. So I will have the exact same thing that you have, and we'll take a look at this. So this is actually a real site, okay? And since I know this is legitimate and there's no problems with it, I'm going to go to it directly. So this is just their site. And if I go to sign in, this is the URL that shows up, okay? So I use that as my starting point, okay? So inside of RiskIQ, I wanted to see, I want to find phishing, and phishing is going to want to get credentials, and those credentials were used on the login page. So I wanted to start off my investigation looking at that, okay? So this is like, let's say that you're working for Navy Federal, and you want to make sure that you have the phishing under control, and you know what you need to do to take care of it, okay? So as an investigator, you should be looking at the host pairs, and there's 1,000 host pairs here, okay? Quite a bit. And which ones are good, which ones are bad? By looking at this page, you don't know. You might see some things that have been blocked in the past, but here's something that's in here, and I don't know if this is good or bad. Well, what can I do to understand, hey, if this is legitimate or not? I can't go there directly, because if I go there directly, I could get malware on my machine, affect my organization, cause ransomware, who knows what. So I want to be smart about it, okay? So one way I can do it is I can go into RiskIQ, and from the threat intelligence portal page, from here, if I search for something, it gives me a reputation score. So we don't hide why we say something's good or bad. We base it upon our knowledge of what we've seen in the past. And so we say, hey, this ASN, the infrastructure hosted by the ASN, are more likely to be malicious. Doesn't mean it is, it just means, hey, it could be, okay? And the domain registered with this registrar are more likely to be malicious. So the registrar that's being used has a lot of fraudulent stuff that people have done. It could be like a free registrar. But based upon those two things, it starts ranking and giving it a higher score. So this is suspicious, okay? So if I wanted to see like what this was, I can go into like URL Scan.io. If you're using our digital footprint products or brand protection products, it would be done for you. But I'm trying to give you a way that you can go through and see what's there and see. So right now this is not up, but if I looked in the past, let's see if this was here. Let's see. And there was something a day ago. So if I looked at this a day ago, oh look, it's a picture of the login screen, and it's not your domain, and it's probably in a foreign country. Let's see where this is. Does it show in here? I can't see it. So a lot of stuff in Britain was, so no, it's probably not right. So right there, I know it's bad. So this reputation score, okay, help me. And if I go look at that in the advanced search, I get these Analyst Insights that are up above. And those Analyst Insights give me the capability of understanding. Those are questions that you might have had, like, hey, how long ago was this registered? When was it last updated? So it was only registered 4 days ago. So it's a fairly new domain. If it's less than 30 days old, that's really suspicious. And, you know, it's not an Alexa 1000, okay? And I can look on this map, and this map is telling me 6 months worth of time. How long have we seen this active? And we see 4 days. The little triangle tells me that means it's something that's first seen. So a new IP address was seen on that day. The number represents the number of IP addresses that we saw, okay? So this last one saw 2 IP addresses. So if you notice, we also see routable and non-routable, and if it was both. And you're probably thinking to yourself, it's the internet. You're never going to see a non-routable IP, and you're wrong. And the reason why you're wrong is that we go to the DNS servers, the name servers. We pull all the records. So you might have an entry for a machine that might have a loopback address of 127.0.0.1. So a threat actor might stage it, have it already, have a short time to live on that DNS and get it all ready. And then they flip the switch and give it a public IP. They do their attack and they flip the switch and they take it offline. So by the time you go and look, it's no longer up. You don't see it, okay? So we want to show you that thing because we're checking all the time. We can show you if it was routable, non-routable, back to routable, if it was both. So you can see that can be an indicator that something might not be right, okay? So you can see that, okay? And then we also tell you the source of where we gathered this data, okay? Who was the one that actually found this information? So RiskIQ and all these others, and on this one, it was just RiskIQ, okay? So we give you that information. So we're gonna look at the host pairs here. So when we look at the host pairs, we can see that it's going out to Navy Federal, okay? And so it was reaching in and grabbing it. So the parent, It's like if your child has something, you can take it from them. And like your parents can say, hey, you give me that and take it from you as well. So it gives you the capability of understanding this relationship flow. Okay. So Navy Federal might be sending data out to Google Analytics, or might be pulling in something from Facebook. So we understand the flow of how these relationships are on the internet. Okay. So now if we go back to Navy Federal, okay, for every one of these things that are listed. So if I really want to find this, if I go to child host name and I make that my Navy Federal, that will filter to show every parent going into Navy Federal, my Navy Federal. So if I start looking, my Navy Federal was reaching the my Navy Federal, that's fine. But this particular one, let's see this one. So if I come here now and I go back to the main view and I look again, and I search, oh, this one's suspicious now, okay? Domain is using a name server is most likely to be malicious. The ASN is more likely to be malicious, and the actual registrar is a lot of that activity. Okay, so if I drill into that, let's take a look. Hey, it's been up for, it was up for like 2 weeks, okay? So if I copy this and I go into search here, it doesn't show that it's up right now. So if we search, I can say 2 days ago, and here's Navy Federal again, okay? If I look at the host pairs, I can look to see if it's Navy, sometimes they're attacking many people, but this particular one was only Navy Federal, okay? And it was registered 12 days ago. So another new domain, okay? So those are all the things that you can do to do these types of investigations to understand which path to go down. So if you're new to this threat analytics or threat investigations, you can now help yourself. So if I took the real one, okay, and I searched inside of here and said, hey, give me the information about it, hey, it's unknown. There's nothing bad. There's no indicators, good or bad, talking about this one. If I went to Navy Federal and I searched on it, we can see if there's anything there. No, that one's good too. There's no indicators one way or another to show anything. So that is good. Okay. Now, knowing that I'm looking at these host pairs and I'm trying to understand what's good and bad, the other thing is to look at what type of things are happening. What are they performing? So if somebody's coming through and doing a CSS import, pulling in your style sheet, they're like kind of duplicating your site. So if I filter to show all the CSS imports, you start to see a lot of stuff listed. Going back 2019, 2018, and I'm going to extend this to be 500 to see the complete list. But I can go back in time and start to look at these and seeing, this was just an IP address reaching in, but I have data going back to 2016 showing different domains that pulled in the style sheets from this main site. So I can actually go through and automate this and understand, what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another Jupyter notebook and we will see it. Okay. So the very first one is saying, just set it up, go back 30 days and look at my NavyFederal.org. Okay. And it grabs the data. And then I tell it, show me the host pairs. So it's grabbing all the host pairs. Okay. And it's showing me what direction and what happened. It was an image, it was a source. And then I'm putting it into a data frame so I can make it look pretty. So I can actually see it a lot easier. So you can see these now. So when I come into here, I want to look at the causes, okay? And there's an image, there's a parent, there's a redirect, an unknown. And sometimes when we go and pull something, we actually go to the website and we get the data in, we can't determine what it was, but we want to register that, hey, we couldn't see what type it was, but we leave it as an unknown because sometimes the unknown, because the hacker's trying to do stuff so it appears different, we're not able to classify it. So we have unknown, and then if it was an XML HTTP request. So that comes in. And then what I did was I whitelisted all of the things that were legitimate. So I created a whitelist. So now that just shows me the things that not in my whitelist that are part of the host pairs. Okay. So I have those. And then I said, I did this because sometimes you want to just throw out a whole TLD. So I said, like, throw out gov, anything with gov. So if you're doing one like that's attacking a government institution, you can actually throw out all the other government ones, whatever they are. Okay. And then I came in and said, show me all the causes. Okay. So here's all the images, all the scripts. And then I'm filtering to say, give me those lists of hosts. Okay. So these are all the hosts, all the host names. And then I'm going through and say, okay, I now have cleaned it up. So it's here. And then I'm going to get the reputations. So now you can see it's going to actually go through and give me the reputation for every single one of those things that are listed. Okay. And then I want to go back and see how many days that was online for. When was it registered? So you can see here's one that was only 7 days. Okay. So it's a way for me to look at these rather quickly and know if they're good or bad. And then this one goes through and takes all that information that we saw and said, hey, I'm looking at when it was first seen, when it was last seen, the organization, the parent and the image, and whether the score, what the score was. And you can see I have malicious, suspicious. So all of these right now, I've already now done my investigation. I'm pretty much done. And then I can go through and look at these individual ones. And I just picked them from the list to say, go through and tell me what happened for each one of these. Okay, and this one is not real. And here, so some of these had fallen off because they're, it's only looking back 30 days. So I'm just going to grab one. So I'll grab this one. So if I grab this and I copy it and I come into here and I paste it in and I run it again, boom, you can see, hey, they pulled images. There was a frame, a CSS import, some unknown things, and some other scripts from other places. And these are probably to find out where you are in the world, what type of where your IP is, and so they can target you. So here we are. So this is now a way for you to go through and take anything and immediately look at something like, here's one that was neutral. And see what happened. Hey, they're doing a CSS import. You know, they probably shouldn't be, you know, and so I'll grab one more. Let's see. So I wanted to give you this capability of performing these at scale or performing these perfectly every single time. So if you gave this to a junior person, you can come up with the way that you do it, the methodology, what you're looking at, how you're filtering it. Then you can give this to somebody that's junior and say, plug it in and get the information. And then you'll know if it's good or bad. And then you can escalate it if you need to. Or if you used a brand protection outfit, RiskIQ does it, but there's others. You can just send this to them and say, here are the people that are attacking us today. Block these, take down, whatever you need to do. So it's done. Okay. Any questions, Darren or Jackie or Josh, that have come in?
No, we can certainly take some real quick.
Sorry, I was not monitoring the chat. I was playing with my notebook. Okay.
Yeah, this is
I got lost in my notebook. Darren, any chats that have come in? Any questions?
Nothing significant, no.
Okay. Okay, so the next one now is, I'm going to give you a list of domains. Some of these are legitimate. They belong to Netflix. Others are very malicious. So don't go there directly. I defanged them for you. When you put them into RiskIQ, we take out that bracket so you don't have to worry about it. So you can just paste it directly in. And I want you to tell me which ones are good or bad. So I'm going to paste them in to the chat. And then what we'll do is you can tell me, we'll come back to this when you can say, hey, it's good or bad, and we can do it together and we can see it. Okay. So I want you to try to figure out if it's good or bad. And you don't have to just run it from the threat intel portal screen. If you do the advanced search, you should be able to tell rather quickly which ones are good or which ones are bad. Okay. And I want you to look at who is, I want you to look at the certificates. I want you to look at the host pairs. Okay. And that should tell you as well. And then you can also use the threat intel portal, the main screen from RiskIQ. But when you drill in and do the advanced search, you'll be able to see those things. I want to train your eyes to know if you're looking at an advanced search, you don't have to jump to the other screen to see. You can tell. Okay. So let me paste these in real quick. There we go. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to bring up RiskIQ and we'll begin. Okay. So I'm going to do this first one through here and the rest I'm going to do from the other one. So when I run this one, what's the first thing that shows up on the screen? I can see right here, it belongs to the attack surface Netflix. So if I look at that, I go, oh, it's a Netflix property, okay? So right there, I know it's there. So it must be okay. It must be legitimate because it's in their attack surface. Okay, I'm going to go into the product inside the advanced search, and we're going to look from here. So I can see that it's been around all the way back in 2016. So it's been around for a long time, years, okay? So this 6 months worth of time, this is all the data that we have in the system on it, okay? There's over 1,000 IP addresses. If I look at the ASN, if I hover over it, it tells me it's on Netflix IP addressing. So I know it's Netflix. So just from here, from looking at it, I can say it's Netflix ASN, okay? If we look at the whois data, okay? Mark Monitor is the registrar, and the organization is Netflix, and it's their address in Los Gatos. Oh, okay. It's Netflix, okay? If I look at the certificates, let's see who the certificate providers are. There's almost 200,000. So if I expand this out, I can see that it's a paid certificate. And there's all these other domains that are associated with it, okay? And if you notice here, there's an assets.nflxext.com. And there's a codex.netflix. That's the one we're looking at. But this particular one, okay, is in the list that we have in here. So I can look at that one and go, oh, this certificate also works for that site. So they're probably connected, but we'll have to check. So let's take a look at this. So I'm going to bring up that asset one. So from here, I'm searching, and remember it's fanged, but when I put it in, it should come back and search for it anyway. So it's giving me the real one, okay? Let me defang it. Let me see. It didn't seem to do it correctly. Let's see. Okay, there it is. That's better. Okay. So if we take a look at this now, let's look at the whois real quick. And if we look at the whois, it's probably the same thing. Mark Monitor, part of Netflix. But let's look at the host pairs. 28,000 different host pairs. So if I look here, I can see that Netflix.com is going there. Codex.netflix, NFLXEXT.com is going there. Great. So those are the same. Okay. Help.netflix.com is going to here. Okay. So those are all things that look legitimate. DVDnetflix.com goes there. So we can search for that one. So I'm just going to right click and open it. That was on the list. Okay. And if we take a look at this one, it's been around for years, 2011. I can look at the who is. It's registered to Netflix. Okay, so that's theirs. So I'll drop back to the other tab. Okay, so now if we're looking at this, there's a lot of other ones that come up in here that we look at. So let's look at this list. So Netflix support. So I'm going to copy that from the list, and let's take a look. And it should have defanged this, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. I'll need to talk to our engineers and see what happened. Okay, so I run this, and immediately, what do I see? It's been up for 1 day in the last 6 months because I only see one square. It was up years ago, back in 2017, for like 2 weeks, and now it's only up for 1 day, okay? And if I look at the host pairs, it's reaching out to the same assets.netflix that Netflix was and other ones, okay? If I look at the whois data, let's see what we can find. It's all privacy protected. It's up in Toronto. And if I go back to 2017, that was in Washington, okay? But it was privacy protected. And I can look at the history of that. So it's all been privacy protected. Not much there. No certificate was seen with it, okay? 2 components. So another thing is when you look at the components, that could be a red flag. Think of it this way. If you're paying for this infrastructure and I'm a bad person, do I want to run stuff I don't need? No. So I have 2 components here, but if I went to that assets.netflix, how many components do I have here? I have 232 different components. So not having data or having a small amount of data could be a red flag, okay? So these are all the things that you'll learn as you start to investigate things. But these are some of the things that just from experience that you're going to come across, okay? So now I have that one. So I can also go and copy this. And if I go out to the main one, if I search for this and go, hey, it's malicious. Why is it malicious? It was observed phishing on this entity. Okay, we observed direct phishing from there. Okay, so let's go through and just check these real quick, and then we'll start to go through the Jupyter notebook I created. Okay, so I'm going through, and this one defanged it perfectly. Okay, so the TLD is mostly bad. It's registered to with more likely to be malicious. Oh, Netflix reactivate me. Okay, that's what we just looked at. Let's look at the 7.netflix.live. Then we sought phishing. Okay, here's another one. Here we go. 100% malicious. Blocked because of phishing. Okay. Netflix update. Let's take a look at the Netflix update. Oops. I did the, hold on. Netflix update. I did a, here we go. Okay, and now restore Netflix.
Benjamin, how did you find all these?
These are all inside of the host pairs. So I just grabbed a whole bunch out of the host pairs that had Netflix kind of names, typo squatted domains in there. And I didn't know if they were good or bad, but I wanted to just check them. So I thought it would be a good exercise that you can now understand which ones, what's happening, which ones are good or bad. So I can go through individually each one and see, hey, which one's good or bad. So I'm looking at Netflix and that one's going to be the real one. No reputation because it's the legitimate one. And let's look netflixalert.com. Here's another one. Okay. And so I can do this onesie twosie type stuff. And then there's the last one is this netflixpayment.org. Okay. And this one doesn't show anything. But if I take this and we look at, let's go outside and see if there's anything there. A month ago, there was one there. And here's a Netflix login. And Google Safe Browsing says it's malicious. Okay, so we verified that that one's bad. Okay, so now let's go through and let's look at Netflix. So now I want to scale this because remember, this assets.netflix.com had 28,000 host pairs. So this happens to be the image system that all the sites go to. Like if you're going to look up a movie or a DVD, this is where they're stored, all those images and information. So all these other things come into it and pull things out. So this is where you get the login information, all that type of imagery is stored here, okay? So this is the place where it's being attacked all the time. So I want to go through and I want to start from that known good point and find everything that's bad with it, all the phishing. Okay, so there's 27,000 there. So I'm going through and I'm starting at my Jupyter notebook and I'm going to focus on this assets.netflix.com. So it's bringing in the 27,000 host pairs. And when that asterisk goes away, I have it. So now I'm going to analyze them. So here they are. Here's all the stuff. And it's only going back 30 days. Okay, it's been around for a long time, that good site. So now I'm going to start analyzing them and see what the causes are. Okay. Now I'm going to go through and see all the different types. Okay, I'm going through and have my whitelist to say, take out everything that I know is good. And you can start seeing these lists. duckdns.org. I don't think they're using that. There's an MX record for it. So there's some sort of like Mexico. So there's something in Mexico. And as I go further, you'll start to see a pattern. Okay. So I'm grabbing all these different directions. I'm grabbing the host list, just like I did for Navy Federal, okay? So now I'm grabbing all those different domains, and now I'm getting the reputation. So for each one of these, I'm getting the reputation score for each one of those domains, okay? And this might take a little bit of time because there was a long list, okay? So you can start seeing all the malicious and suspicious.
Wow.
And this is just going to go for a minute or so because it's live and it's actually pulling this data. And once it's in the notebook, I can then do stuff with it. Okay.
Exactly.
And then once I do that, I can look at the age of these and see, 4 days, 25 days, 16 days, 26 days, 36 days. All those ones that are only been around for a little bit are probably bad. Okay. And now I'm looking at the list to say, here's all the malicious ones we know for sure, okay? This is just 30 days, okay? All the neutral, but these are all suspicious. And anything with the CSS import is probably not good. So now what I'm doing is I'm gonna go through and look at a few of these. And so these are some of the ones that we ran. Okay, so you can see here that the parent page was going from here to there, and you can see kind of these relationships and what's being pulled in, what frames. If we go through here, these are all just the CSS imports. So they're copying the style sheet to do it. And I would suspect that all of these are bad because I did my whitelist. All these other ones are bad. So you can see this one was just from the 13th, which was yesterday. So let's take a look. So if I see this one and I come into RiskIQ and I look at it, was up for 3 days and it's been blocked, okay? So let's take a look here and see if anybody had submitted it to be searched. Oh, yep, a day ago. And there's the login screen, okay? So these are, it's within the last 24 hours, we saw activity on these. Okay, so this is last seen. So the 13th, the 12th, the 11th, the 10th. So you can see going back 30 days. And I can go back to the beginning of time if I wanted to. to see if there's any history with it. And then I went through and exploded some of these to say, give me the reason behind these. You know, what did you find with these? Why do we say it's malicious? What's the score? What's the breakdown of why we're saying that's bad or suspicious? Any questions? Anything come in?
Not yet.
So I went through and I copied all these things just to show you. You can do the query just from the threat intel portal and immediately get a score, and anything suspicious or malicious or bad, the ones that are neutral or no score at all, you might need to drill in a little bit. But when you start seeing those patterns, like it's only been up for 2 days, it's not registered in the United States, it's pulling the style sheets and images from that, and it's not a Netflix property. All those things add up. So, Josh, any statements or something? So, like, I wanted to give you guys the ability to take the knowledge that we've done from previous exercises and workshops and scale it, because if you can automate these processes that when you're calling out and doing these things, filling out these workbooks, and then you just look at them, or if you populated this and then took it back into another system, that's true, XDR type stuff where we have the outside information. We're like the SIM on the internet. So when your internal systems fire, seeing something, communicating something in the outside world, you now have the ability to understand the reputation of that IP or domain, but then to get the broader picture and see, is it related to anything else? Can I look at those host pairs and say, is it anything else? Now, one of the ones I wanted to show you was, I'm going to bring up 2 other domains real quick, okay? So I'm going to put this in the chat real quick, and then I'm going to bring them up, okay? So I forgot about this one, okay? So let me do the first one, and then I'll do the second one. Okay.
So while Benjamin is doing that, show of hands if you want to raise a hand to who could use some of this functionality for the way Benjamin has sorted through these findings today.
Wow. Thank you. So one other thing I wanted to mention was, when you do these investigations, you don't know if it's a one-off or if it's like a targeted attack to say, this person's going after me all the time, So I found this one, the 7netflix.live, and there was an IP address associated with it. So if you open up this IP address and we look at the domain names that are registered there, you start seeing a pattern here. Netflix00.com, 7netflix.live, 9netflix.live, 8netflix, 5, 1netflix.org. All these different, there's 51 of them that are listed. So all of these other ones should be blocked as well. It's not good. And you can see that over time, we blocked them for phishing. So this has been attacking Netflix for a long time, this particular IP. So this is one that I would just try to see if we can take down the system altogether, because it's like whack-a-mole. They're coming back.
Yeah, I mean, we need our Netflix, so let's.
That's right. Right now in this day and age, it's like it's the I think it's the one thing that got everybody through COVID.
Well, it's one of 2.
Yeah.
There's some other things. Diet Coke.
Yes, Diet Coke. Diet Coke was the other one.
Yeah. So and home delivery that
was already happening.
Yeah.
We're lazy over here.
But the big thing is that I wanted to scale your operations, because when you're looking at SecOps is saying, what can I do to take the knowledge of somebody that's an expert and take that expertise and bring it down. Or that valuable employee that's been there forever, and if they leave because they retire or they move on to another area of their career, they can be the same company, but they're not doing that work anymore. You lose that expertise. So this is a way for you to document these things. And what's nice about these workbooks is that when you save this, the data's in there. So this is the full investigation. So if you did this for each one and just saved it and brought up a new one and cloned it, you would have all these investigations going back in time and look at them. And only if you rerun them do they go back and refetch the data. So it gives you the capability of preserving those investigations in these types of notebooks so that you can turn it over to somebody else and they can look at it and go, oh, I walked through and I can see exactly what you did, because each statement that happens, you can annotate and say, I'm doing this because of this. I saw this, I ran this query, here's the information. Then I researched this. You can have it spit out the results and maybe throw it into another notebook or do something else with it, or pipe it into your ticketing system.
The amount of time you save with what you just showed us is incredible.
Right. So the cool thing about this is that a few of these that I come across are over 1 million host pairs. And when you look at that, you go, there's no way somebody can go through and click on these or try them or do them. So you have to do it in a programmatic way. And I wanted to do that methodology of what I was looking at and how I was doing it. And that's what I worked with Mark on, was to say, hey, like, for example, that CVE one, all the time when I remember that we would get calls that they'd say, does this affect us? Does this affect our customers? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you've just wasted 2 hours of my staff's time or my time. I'd rather make it in such a way that if we can build it correctly, you can give it to that person and say, just run it. Right. You don't need to interrupt our people. Here's a place where you can go plug in that information and the results will spit out. Or we do it proactively. So then instead of calling, they can just go look it up on an internal wiki.
Right.
And that's how you scale SecOps. But it's not just the data. Passive total is just the data. You need the context. So I need to be able to know that, hey, I know about this threat, this vulnerability, because I can go search for that version. But I can say, is that meaningful to me? Or is that meaningful to these other entities I'm doing business with? That's the context you miss if you don't have Illuminate, where you're missing that ability to filter all those threat intelligence articles to say, yeah, there's 1,000 articles that came out today. Out of those 1,000, there's only one that pertains to me. And there's 3 articles that pertain to my third parties that I'm interested in. So those are the ones I'm going to focus on. Those are the ones I'm going to look at.
Hey, Benjamin, I saw you did the 7 Netflix. Did you do the one below it that you had pasted in the chat? If we don't have any questions, you could.
Oh, that's the same IP. I just drove into it. Okay. That was the IP address for it. So what's really funny is if you take a look at this, there's a new one that this was on the 11th. This is 2019. Yeah. First scene, last scene. So if I do last scene, ascending, let's see. Here's one. So let's take a look at this. Let's see what's happening with this one. No host pairs, been around for a long time. So this might be a legitimate one. But the IP has been blacklisted. So black decor. Let's see if I can find a different one in here. Oops. This was on the September 20th. ATT work. Let's see if this one has anything. Let's see. We're almost out of time, so I want to. So ATT work, US.work. Yeah, this is probably bad. 24 days ago. Okay. And let's look at the certificate. It's probably let's encrypt. Let's see. No, cPanel. Okay. So this is what we're trying to accomplish in this particular one, is scaling your investigation, scaling your ability to do things. When we're done, we burn down the lab. So this account turns off and it changes. So I wanted to make sure that you can come in and sign up for a trial so you can continue. So I'm going to paste this link in so you can go ahead and kick off your trial if you haven't. You can activate it. You'll then see your own organization, but you need to use an email address that belongs to your organization. If you use like a Yahoo or Google email, it's not going to give you an attack surface because we know you don't live there. It's not your organization. But if you use a legitimate domain, we will give you that attack surface for that organization. And what's nice about it is that these third parties, even if you sent them the information saying, you have this problem, you need to fix it, they can come into RiskIQ, activate an Illuminate trial, and see that same data for that trial period.
Yeah, and it lasts a lot longer too. It's like 30 days.
Yes.
Instead of just, the 2 hours we've been here today.
Correct.
Sorry, I got wrapped up in my Jupyter there for a second. I'm going to call you later. I think I found something.
Okay, very cool.
Workshop.
Yeah, I think I found something.
Okay. Well, awesome. So we're at time now. So I want to make sure that we answered all your questions. We're going to put this recording out there. Everyone that attended. Oh, who won the $100?
Oh, Barrett. Who is the one that got the $100 Amazon gift card?
Sandra P is our lucky winner today. I will be reaching out to her directly this afternoon, but congratulations, Sandra.
Congrats.
Congratulations. And Jackie, welcome to the spotlight with us.
Hey.
I'm glad that you've decided to join us and come out in front of the camera. But like Jackie's done like so much stuff like that. This whole series was from Jackie coming up with this idea.
She's that behind the scenes producer, and we're just the jabbering, Bert and Ernie, having a little, back and forth and dialogue. I'm really going to tell you about this thing I found later.
and one thing I want to mention is if you have ideas for like, hey, this is a use case that I'd love to see, let us know, because I want to make these real world experiences that you can help to train the masses. The only way we're going to make the world a better place is by turning the light on and illuminating where all these bad guys are and where their infrastructure is. So when it changes and we fingerprinted them, we know what's installed, what's running, where they are, how it looks like. Wherever it pops up, we can identify it and we can put those preventative blocking capabilities in to stop those things from coming in and getting us. It's the only way we're going to make it better.
Yeah. The only way we do it is if we do it together. So well said, Benjamin. And we are grateful for everyone being here today. Check out that trial link, because then you can keep the fun going. And then the resources, of course, we shared that link earlier. You got to the Jupyter Notebook. There's additional resources there as well. And that lab lasts a lot longer and it's more real world because it's your attack surface, your threats that are relevant to you. And until next time, we'll see you in a couple of weeks on our next workshop.
Bye, everyone.